Hi, my name is Jack, and today I want to tell you about a mystery, one that remains unsolved, one that still haunts me whenever I think about that night. It was around 10:30 p.m. on a Saturday. I was preparing snacks for a live stream I had been craving all week, something I believed would finally make my weekend feel worth it. I had 2 cans of Diet Pepsi, a large pack of Cool Ranch flavored Doritos, and a few slices of leftover pepperoni pizza from the night before. I was completely alone, ready to watch the only stream that justified me paying my internet bill. What I didn't know was that this stream would drag me into a rabbit hole so deep, it would traumatize me for life. I grabbed my laptop, turned off all the lights, and searched for his channel. The streamer was a Chinese man, whose content focused on exploring abandoned buildings. Most of his streams were uneventful, just him wandering through dark, worn-down places. Nothing was particularly creepy beyond the environment itself, but this time was different. This wasn't just some old, run-down building. It was an abandoned laboratory. He wasn't very popular and didn't have a large fan base. Usually, only a few hundred people watched him live, and as the stream progressed, the viewer count would slowly drop. This stream started the same way as all the others. He introduced himself and described the location. An old, creepy laboratory building. Unlike any other locations he had covered on his channel, this one looked strangely different. The history and purpose of the laboratory are still unknown, but that wasn't the strangest part of the stream. He picked up his camera and entered, moving from room to room, corridor to corridor. For the first few hours, nothing seemed suspicious. Just a very strong, foul stench that covered the entire place. As more viewers left the stream, that's when things started to change. After several hours, he captured something unusual on camera. He focused his flashlight on it and suddenly stopped talking. It was a skull. It looked fresh, as if it had been left there recently. The skull was covered with bits of rotting flesh, with maggots crawling inside it. And the saddest part was, the skull was not a normal one. It was small, like the skull of a baby. This place was used for shooting a horror movie, he said nervously. These are just props. I knew he was lying. He had to be. Saying anything else would have gotten his stream taken down. It was already too much. But I didn't realize this was only the beginning. He passed through several back rooms and broken doors until he reached a long, dark corridor. The corridor was more like a tunnel. A long tunnel filled with nothing but darkness, and a horrible stench flowing through it. Just looking at it sent chills down my spine. I usually don't get scared easily, and I was used to this kind of content, but this tunnel seemed to have a heavy presence, something oppressive. As he walked forward, more skulls and bones appeared, increasing with every step. Some bones looked fresh, while others were old, hinting they had been left there for ages. Then something else changed. That stench became heavier, filling the corridor completely. He had been covering his face from the beginning, but this time it was worse than ever before. This was the moment when a normal exploration stream turned into something deeply disturbing. I noticed he was talking more than usual, non-stop, almost nervously. It felt like he was trying to distract himself from what he was seeing. After walking for several minutes, he noticed an opening to a room. By this point, the stench had become unbearable. He described it as worse than vegetables left to rot in mud for years. Worse than the smell of a dead animal crushed on the road. He said it was so sickening that if he continued streaming, he might throw up. Still, he entered the room. I wish I had stopped watching at that point. Inside were several industrial barrels leaking a strange fluid. He examined them and said, "I think these are the source of the smell. Some kind of expired chemicals." He was partly right, but that wasn't the real source. It was far worse than anything he or I could have imagined. The floor was flooded with stagnant yellow-green water seeping through the walls. The room was large, and at the far end stood an elevated platform, like a massive tank or swimming pool. It was made of concrete. As he approached it, he began gagging. His voice cracked. "The smell! It's coming from here," he said with cracked voice. He climbed up to see what was inside, and this was the moment that traumatized me. A pool filled with the bodies of children. Some looked less than a year old. Others appeared to be around 12. The most disturbing part was that they were all at different stages of decomposition. "These are props," he said again, but they were far too real. Countless lifeless bodies, left there to rot slowly. There was no blood in the bodies, as if it had been drained out of them. Even though he only showed the inside of the tank for a few minutes, I noticed something. The flesh of the bodies was yellowed. Their skin was pale. Most importantly, many of the bodies floating in the pool were missing heads, and some were cut open. Every second I looked at it, my heart broke. If this was real, what could these innocent children possibly have done to deserve this? I asked myself. He began vomiting, shouting that he couldn't continue the stream, and ran towards the exit of the laboratory. He was so deep inside the building that it took him almost 45 minutes just to reach the exit. Once outside, he said he would return, better prepared, then abruptly ended the stream. Even after it ended, I sat there staring at my screen, trying to process what I had just witnessed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, questioning everything. Was it a serial killer's hideout? Was the entire stream fabricated? To comfort myself, I convinced myself it was staged, that none of it was real. This helped me sleep, even though I knew it wasn't. That illusion was shattered in his next stream, where many of my questions were finally answered. After a few days, he started his next stream, and this time, just like he said, he was prepared. He was wearing eye goggles, an N95 respiratory mask, and silicone gloves, standing exactly where he had recorded his last stream. Without any other thought, he headed back into the lab, and I was immediately hooked. The lab was huge, and in the last stream, he had only explored a small area of the building. This time, he might discover something else, maybe answers to the questions I had been holding since the last stream. He again found his way back to that tunnel-like corridor, and with all his equipment, he headed straight toward the same door. As he entered the room, I noticed something. The barrels that had been scattered around the corner in the previous stream were now arranged neatly in the corner of the room. Seeing this left both him and me speechless. For a second, I could see the paranoia and shock etched across his face. He panned the flashlight towards the pool that had made him sick last time. He climbed up to the pool and realized the pool had been covered. It was covered with a thick sheet of canvas, as if the perpetrator had watched his last stream and come back to cover up the scene. Even though the pool was covered, he lifted the canvas and a wave of rotting stench filled the entire room. And there were 3 bodies that looked noticeably fresher than the others, like they had been placed there recently. 2 of the bodies looked to be around 9 and 10 years old, and the others seemed to be about 4 years old. All 3 bodies were stiff and swollen. The stench was so strong that it penetrated through his mask. He had to retreat back toward the exit and ended the stream again, gagging and vomiting. This left me with even more questions than before, and still no answers. He didn't stream for 2 months, and the last videos on his page were still of that lab. I watched the videos again and again, but I couldn't find anything new. Eventually, I decided to move on and got busy with my corporate life, even though the scene never left my mind. Then one day, while scrolling through social media, I came across his account again. I clicked on his profile to see if he had posted anything about that lab. But strangely, he had deleted all the videos of it. Every video and the 5-hour-long stream of that laboratory were gone. and the comments on his channel were now turned off. This was deeply confusing. Why did he delete the videos? That lab stream was, in my opinion, the most eventful stream on his entire channel. Why delete that? He continued posting new streams as if nothing had ever happened, never mentioning that laboratory again.